off, and also my legs never want to stop moving. But if I walk them enough, then eventually I'll be able to go to sleep. Unfortunately, walking hurts. The more I do it, the more it hurts. Walking is probably the only thing that my body doesn't eventually give out and tire of. I don't know why, but I could probably walk from the Pacific to the Atlantic and back, no problem. Well, there is a problem, because conceptually that sounds good, but I am for shit at going uphill or downhill. I am better at going downhill sometimes and better at going uphill sometimes, depending on whether or not I have to go down a full step. Because if I can take baby steps downhill, then I can usually do that without hurting too bad. Going uphill, never. No matter what, going uphill sucks. Now, as far as proof of concepts go, I keep saying prototypes when I'm talking about my inventions. I'm sorry I keep darting my head from one direction to the next. I'm not seeing imaginary creatures or anything like that. I'm looking for half tobaccos or something of that nature. Possibly change that somebody dropped. I do that especially when there's bushes and I see something shiny in the bushes. Most of the time it turns out being a receipt or something like that blew into the bushes. And I got a rule, if I touch the garbage, I gotta throw it away. Evening, gentlemen. Well, I get to leave tomorrow. The officers came down and spoke with me today about the lady down there. I don't know, she's nuts, but I helped them out all day instead of leaving here like I was gonna.
Yeah.
But I guess the guy, Tom or whatever, he's gonna help get her to Portland, so I don't need to deal with that crazy lady anymore.
Well, that's a plus.
Absolutely. And the cops, when they came and talked to me, they were telling me about a couple of places that I was like, these cops got some pretty good ideas. These are also places I already planned on going, so we got it covered.
That works out, man. Nice.
Absolutely. And by the way, thank you for the conversation this morning. That rocked.
Yeah.
You made me feel like a person.
Hey, if you're willing to talk, that's...
Yes, sir. Well, you guys are working, so I'll let you have your time back. All right. Sound like Eeyore. I do that sometimes. Nobody loves me.
Yeah.
Night, gentlemen. Yes, sir. Like a motherfucker. Anyway, let's get back to proof of concept. Some of my ideas are a little bit radical and out there. When I try to explain them, they just end up sounding crazy. So it's easier just to build it and show somebody. Usually that's what it takes. I'll give you an example. One day, Brandon Jeffs and Kevin Lavant had a chair they were trying to get out of the place. And for the life of them, those two untrained circus monkeys couldn't fucking figure out the goddamn task. Epic fail. So between the two of those two fucktards fucking up every goddamn thing except for football, they got it stuck there, and then they decided when they couldn't get it unstuck, they were just going to leave it there and each one of them was going to pass a box over the top to the other one, and they were going to carry their 2 boxes over there to the new apartment that Kevin Levant wanted us to move into, because he was temporarily moving into ours, which was the big one, with his girlfriend, because obviously he couldn't live with his wife anymore because they were getting a divorce. So anyway, no sooner did they get started walking out the back door than I picked up that fucking chair and walked right on through and right on past them with their 2 fucking boxes. I watched those 2 messing with that damn thing for probably 15 to 30 minutes. And I'm saying that on the super ultra conservative side. I mean, there's a potential. It was the funniest thing too. I was trying not to laugh the whole time, and I did a great job. And most of the time I did a great job of not saying anything too. But as y'all probably know, you know, life is what happens when you're busy making plans. Anyway, with the stuff that I'm making now, you know, there's the stuff that you want to make when you have the money for the nice things. It's not a proof of concept, it's a actual test bed, you know, greater than just a test bed. This is something that's all of your proof of concepts for your ultimate idea all put together into something that's as the product is intended, even though it's probably going to get adjusted from there. This is what you want to put out, and this is what you want to show the world as what your intended product is to be. Now, a proof of concept is not the same. The proof of concept, like, you know, let's say you're making a ship, and your whole idea is for the way the water moves around the hull of a ship. Well, you might make that proof of concept on a very small hull that you made yourself. This is not where I was intending on being. I should on right instead of left. Anyway, your boat hull that you're trying to show the proof of concept for, you might build one that's only a few inches long, but let's say you're trying to show how the flow of water flows differently over it and helps to lift the hull itself instead of having to use hydroplanes. So you build the little miniature model, and you're able to show that it does indeed create the lift as you intended it to. And as a result of it creating the lift as you intended it to, you're able to prove that the concept works. And then, as a result, you know it works, other people know it works, and it's worth a little bit more investment to build something a little bit bigger, a little bit better, a little higher quality. You know, something that doesn't look like it was made in a 5th grade craft shop, and it only just barely works because you didn't have the best of anything to do it with. And that's the thing with my little pop-out manta ray boat. My proof of concept is going to be, well, a little dinky boat that I can lay down in on my stomach and control it while laying down on my stomach. And I'll be able to pop it out and open and close it. And once I have that all figured out and all of the bugs in it knocked out, then I'll take some of the trash bags that I have and I'll stick them in the different compartments, and I'll inflate them and put some rubber bands to keep them closed, and that way they'll at least keep at least somewhat inflated. If they do leak, it's not going to be a whole heck of a lot. Whereas a wing like that, or it's a hull, but at that point, you know, it's kind of shaped like a wing. The thing will kind of look like a manta ray, but a manta ray looks a lot like a Horton 229. We don't like the Nazis, so we want to try to avoid references like that. And there's a few tweaks and changes that are made to it. Obviously, it's not a jet fighter. It's actually meant as something that's supposed to go on the water for now in the proof of concept. There's later concepts that are involved in the process, like, all right, I intend in the future, if I'm able to, I want there to be a line of, first of all, adult Legos, so that adults who want to build a house can basically slide their house together, like with Legos. Well, a little bit differently. I want it to be structurally stable, and I want it to be less likely to fall apart if you drop it off a table. And I'm able to do that by using a dovetail groove and two basic types of Legos. If you can imagine a tile, and also imagine the grout in between the tiles. That's kind of how I design the two parts. One of them holds, the other. One of them's the dovetail and one of them's the dovetail groove. And that way they work in conjunction with one another, and also it's an easy pattern. It's also something that can be used to stagger something, so you can create more structural stability or rigidity, or you could make it so that it's more flexible based on where you put certain pieces. But we'll move on. That's all stuff that, if the original idea works, we can work on other future ideas that go around that. I mean, wouldn't it be great if somebody in a trimaran could, have a really wide trimaran and still be able to pull it in and pull the pontoons in and just look like a regular sailboat so you can get through the locks? I had a few people tell me that they have a lot of trimarans, but the reason they don't have trimarans here is because the locks aren't big enough for a ship as wide as a trimaran in most cases to go through. I saw a trimaran. I did see one, but I also saw the catamaran that was in there, and it's pretty friggin' wide. Like, as wide as it is, you would not have it trailerable going down the road without having to pay a full crew of trucks to drive behind you and paying a whole shit ton of money to transport it from wherever it happens to be, almost right next to the coast, you would hope, to the actual water. I mean, if you drove this thing for 2 miles down the highway, you'd have to shut down the highway basically for 2 miles to get it transported. And there's some videos of that actually. I'm not going to all of the ashtrays over there and checking them all yet. I'm going to go to the end of the line and then march my way back. That way I'll end up hitting all the ashtrays because they're all on the way back. And, let's see, 2 pennies, 3 pennies. Alright, I thought there was more change than that on the ground because there's some broken glass in that thing. Just glancing down at all the shinies, I was hoping some of that was dimes, quarters, or nickels, but nope. Anyway, the other thing about when I was saying a line of family homes, well, if you have the Lego brick set up to basically make whatever design you want with it, then the other ones would obviously be more rigid. They would be formed specifically for a purpose-built task. And those would be family homes for on the water. I know that right after you make something out of plastic, it's got a limited quantity of seepage. I know that a lot of places will have a solution that they wash the bottle with inside and out to knock off any of that, or as much as possible, and that way you're less likely to ingest it. And a lot of times that's all it really takes, because it's a little tiny bit of a film that's it's not even noticeable, because it's not a full film. It's just some of the plastic always deteriorates a bit and doesn't want to re-stick. That's because it's made of elastomers and polymers, and I can't remember which one, but one or the other is real susceptible to heat. And it's kind of like if you imagine when you cook eggs and you wait too long because you're trying to make an omelet. Maybe it's your first time ever doing it, and it's on a non-stick skillet, so you figure everything will be all right. But then you flip it over, and the bottom of it is all burnt. You didn't quite realize you kept it on there that long. Well, that stuff that's on the bottom, it's been changed physically due to the heat. Now, if you're in something that's a liquid that's going to stay a liquid while you're doing that, then there are portions of it that are going to do the same thing. And then once it starts to re-solidify, those are still there. But much with the stuff that's in molten metal, you know, the slag and all that, and pig iron, if you're making iron, all that stuff that's in the metals, even when you're forging it, the stuff that as you're forging it, it gets knocked out of it, and it's the stuff you got to scrape off the scale, all that kind of stuff. You know, it used to be your raw product. It used to be the steel or iron that you were working with, and now it's deteriorated because of the heat, or because of the workability, or you pounding it, or whatever else. But it's still in there. There's still parts of it and remnants that are there. And the ones that are inside of the metal aren't so much of a problem. I mean, if there's a lot of it in between some layers, those layers aren't going to bond and it's going to split, and that does become a problem. But as far as, you know, the metals that are going to fall off, the stuff that's been deteriorated that's going to fall off of it, it's just the stuff that's on the exterior. So the majority of the stuff that's broken down and is free is not going to be put out into the atmosphere. It's not going to be released. It's caught in the matrix. I don't mean the matrix like the movie Matrix. I mean the matrix like elastomers and polymers in a plastic usually form a crystalline or polymer matrix, and that is just the, how do you explain it? It's a bunch of molecules all bonded together, and the molecules that are not bonded together, the ones that are free because they've been damaged, they're still surrounded basically by a cage of what they used to be. So the stuff that would potentially be hazardous if it was continually leaching out, it doesn't have the ability to leach out. At least not in our lifetimes. According to some scientists, it could take up to 10,000 years for polyethylene terephthalate to break down. And that's if it's in optimal conditions. So how do we work on that? With the family boats, that would be something where I would basically build a boat and a series of molds, and I would just pump out one boat at a time and put them out there and let people outfit them as they saw fit. You know, I don't have any interest in making all the real fancy pretty shit. You can stock it up with whatever you want. Parks, wildlife, whatever. But the concept that I want to make the suit out of, and the idea behind making it a manta ray, is that the design and body of a manta ray is, well, if you look at it, it's actually quite aerodynamic. It looks very much like the Horton 229, and I think that the Horton 229 may have been inspired by the manta ray, or one specific type of stingray. And I think there's, from what I was watching on YouTube in one of them videos, there's like 600 and something different types of species, or different types of stingray. Might have been 800 and something, I don't know. Trying to be accurate, but don't quote me because I know I'm not. But that's also, one of the things about it is I want things to be artistic, but I want them to be simple. And by picking animals in nature and actually trying to copy and mimic them, kind of the idea would be later on, since this stuff is based on a manta ray, and a Horton 229 is based on a manta ray, and the fact that I'm making it super lightweight, and the fact that I'm making it's kind of like you got a sailboat that just big enough for you and your kid to go out and learn sailing on in the local lake or river, and then you got the boat that you want to sail across the earth in, and you want the most comfort possible. Well, they're both going to have a boat hull, and those boat hulls may be very similar. And that's one of the things about scale. When you scale up, it's difficult to scale up 100% from what you originally started with. It gets disproportionate. You can probably start looking at the math on that if you're actually interested. But for me, I try to focus on the part that Albert Einstein, Nikola Tesla, Leonardo da Vinci told us was important: the imagination. All those people who tell you to grow up, remind them that Albert Einstein didn't. Neither did Tesla. Neither did Da Vinci. The proof of concepts that I've seen from some of these folks, as well as the prototypes that I've seen from some of these folks, a lot of people who are ginormously rich, like Howard Hughes, pouring enormous resources into stuff that was pieces of shit that fell apart. Congratulations, sir. You're an idiot. But you're an idiot with too much money, and as a result, you created jobs, even though it was all a complete and total waste. Oh, not complete and totally. We learned that it's complete and total waste. And of course, what stuff not to waste resources on. Now, with what I want to make, if I was to try to take it out on the open ocean and try to live on something that I'm literally just making as a suit that I can lay down in and make sure that it's at least going to work on the water and fold out easily, that's a far cry from something that's going to be, the thing that would look like a Horton 229 would only be maybe 50 foot wide at the most, but that's still pretty wide. Now, it would also be something that, of course, I would want the wings to fold in, and of course, the quote-unquote wings on a manta ray are not actual wings, but they look exactly like the wings on a Horton 229. The intake on a Horton 229 is basically from where the edge of the mouth on a manta ray to the edge of the mouth on a manta ray would be. So that's another thing to keep into account. I am not into Nazism whatsoever. I am into wildlife. I am into aircraft. I am into the way things work. And, well, if I have one little idea that I'm able to make out of garbage to begin with, to show the concept, that'll help me to have the possibility of utilizing that and any capital that I may gain from it, capital being money. I could utilize that for possibly some property to build on. That way I can buy materials to make upgrades. Of course, I like making things modular. That's out of everything else that the Germans did during World War II, as far as technology goes. I think the part that is the most easy to understand and the most important lesson we learned about constructing things is the modular design of the ME-262. I'm not sure if the math on this is right. I want to say that each section of the ME-262, that's the Messerschmitt 262. It's the first production fighter jet ever. Well, it had, the jet engines on it. That's a brand new thing. It had swept wings. That was a new thing, and it had a lot of other stuff going on for it. But the modular design of it allowed it to be built literally in pieces in the forest. The cockpit, I believe, was the longest section. It was longer than the rest of them. But, that's where all the instruments go. And of course, if you're going to do that section by section, you're going to take each of these sections and go assemble them in a field closer to the airfield or closer to the roads at that point. They'd take off from anything that they'd get away with taking off from that hadn't been bombed yet. But that was the first real attempt at anything like that from the Germans as far as the mass production guidelines go. As far as the American mass production guidelines would go, I should say. Americans had most of their stuff built up like that, from the B-24 Liberator built in a giant fucking factory, and you got the Sherman tank, and it's built in a factory, but it's modular, so you can send it over in parts and pieces and, take apart entire pieces of the assembly by taking some bolts off. But the Messerschmitt 262 took it to a whole nother level, because each one of those compartments, you can take them back apart again. There was one of my designs that I came up with, and it's based on more of a dolphin shape than a shark shape. A lot of airplanes are based on fish as far as the fuselage goes, and the reason for that is because aerodynamics and hydrodynamics are very similar, except, of course, hydrodynamics, that's going through water, and water is a lot thicker, heavier, more dense than air. So has to withstand a lot more pressures, and you're not going to get the high-end top speeds out of it. Alright. There's a lot of ideas that I had that I did build out of garbage. If I'd have been able to finish them up, could have turned out wonderful. My original steam pulse jet that I created, that was based on the Tesla valve idea. It's not a Tesla valve that's on it. It's definitely a Sean valve, but it's based off a similar concept. When Natalie Bollinger disappeared, I had that engine. I took it around with me everywhere I went. And when I was at Miss Peach's house and I found out Miss Natalie Bollinger disappeared, I never saw the engine again after that. I took everything like that out of the backpack so that I could show it. I do have pictures of it though, and that's pretty important because that's kind of a proof of concept, or a proof that I actually built it. It's not proof that it actually worked though. And that's where I got to make a second one. And I was going to do that at one point in time, but then the guy who was financing me being able to make it, which isn't much, well, he told me he wanted to use it for killing people, and I was not okay with that. Later on, Rick McCormick wanted to throw that situation in my face and claim that I ripped that guy off. No, he did let me know that if I didn't want to do it, that he understood and that I could keep everything, even though I didn't build it. And I also have that. He sent that in an email to me. So, you know, of course, he doesn't have access to my email, so he can't destroy the message that he sent. That guy, his name was Andre Gagasian. Also, I found this piece of plastic on the ground. It's a little square. I don't know what it's built for, but it's pretty cool looking. And I want to look into its properties further. So probably by the next time I see that, or next time you guys see it, it'll have been chopped up into a few different test pieces and the properties of it tested. That means seeing how well it cuts, how easily it breaks, how easily it burns, if it does melt, how easily does it stick back together to itself, how quickly does it cool down, does it light up and inflame itself, or does it just kind of bubble? You know, there's a lot of cool stuff to learn about it. Some of it's not very safe, like if you're gonna burn a part of it to see what the properties are, what it's gonna do if burned. It might put off a real toxic smoke, so you're gonna want to avoid that. Alright, I'm going to, now that I'm back at my vehicle, I'm gonna end the video. The stuff that I have in my vehicle, obviously with what that officer was saying, he kept on changing it back to, when I was explaining about the boondock thing, and he kept on changing it back to the city thing. Like, as far as his argument went, oh, he was absolutely right about it in the city, but I was letting him know I wasn't looking for something in the city, and it wasn't going to be camping. It would literally be boondocking, and he wanted to convince me not to. Meanwhile, boondocking is the only kind of free, or quote-unquote free camping that there is in these places, in the forests and such. That's the only kind that there actually is that's free. The free campsites are not free campsites. So when Oregon says that it's free to go to these different areas, and then you look them up, and then you go there and you realize they want $30 a night, and you're going, well, how is it that Oregon is getting away with doing that when it's not actually free? Well, it's because they actually do have the boondocking law, which makes it legal. When that guy was explaining that everything is owned, that's a topic that I've spoken on many times because it screws us over. So, of course, we got an officer confirming that he's aware of such a thing and blah, blah, blah. I liked how he spoke with me. There's, you know, stuff that he was, well, he just didn't want to hear it, you could tell. He just wanted to get on, move on with it. He already knew it wasn't a violent thing and nobody was getting hurt or shot or blown up. They said I was on the right track. I already knew that. They also said I needed to get away from them too. I was already on that. I was already in tune with getting the hell away from her when I realized what was going on with him and he had asked me for help. He asked if he could put his stuff next to my car and asked if he could sleep there. I told him I don't know if you're allowed to sleep there or not. It might say something to you. But yeah, he did. He slept in my chair with a blanket over his head so that if she walked by, she wouldn't recognize him. Where is my tobacco pipe? I went out for a snipe hunt and didn't get shit as far as snipes go, so instead of being able to roll a tobacco, I'm gonna stick this one little dinky one into this tobacco pipe that I made out of aluminum foil, so it looks like a crack pipe. It's totally not cool. It's all New Jack shit, New Jack City and shit. And no, I'm not gonna try to patent an aluminum foil pipe. I'm sure they're already common knowledge. That's one of the things that I try to show in a lot of my inventions too, is that I like to keep them simple and keep them down to simple machines like levers and pulleys and stuff, because you can't patent those. They already exist. You can't patent a lever. You can't patent a pulley if it's something that's, already hundreds or even thousands of years old. I mean, a lever's been around since before there was written history. The lever's been around since before cave paintings. And it doesn't take a very big brain to figure out how to use a lever. When you see it in action, you know what it's doing. So, like if you press down on a branch and it pushes up a rock and there's a bunch of delicious food underneath that tries scurrying out, and then you let it go and it goes back down and you go pick up all the bugs and eat them. Well, next time you're hungry, you might push on that branch and see if any bugs scurry out. Learned behavior. That's learning, well, of course, applied physics. And if a primate can do it, then early man probably did it before sexist. Alright, I'm tired and I'm going to sleep. I don't know what time that officer gets off a shift. I hope the officers someone don't mess with me either, because I got shit I gotta do. That wing nutty lady is on the other side of the building, and it's a very long building, so if she ends up over here harassing me, she went out of her way to pursue it. Which, she's already exhibiting some pretty creepy goddamn behaviors, so I'd like to just avoid her. Tom was a really super nice guy, and he plans on helping to get her to Portland. I'm not sure if that's recorded on YouTube or not. I think it is. I know that some of the other really important stuff is, like when I was making that video about her claiming she was with the CIA and the FBI and all this other stuff. As I'm making the video, I ran into Tom and he started talking about her being that way too. So he verified it in the same video that I was talking about it in the beginning of, but he wasn't with me at the beginning of the video. I just happened to encounter him as I was walking. He did say he was trying to get her to go somewhere else because she was driving everybody nuts. So that part is recorded too. Anyway, you know how we end these videos. Good to be with you. Thanks for coming to visit. Stay out of trouble or don't get caught. Remember, you are your brother's keeper and no victim left behind.